If you're interested in exploring these topics further, learning and connecting with like-minded individuals, check out the 3 Patreon discussion groups available. Just visit theinfinitesparkofbeing.com and click the participate button. I also offer a free meditation group online every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. Just go to any of my social media profiles for the link found in my link tree. There's no pressure to be on camera or to actively participate in any of these groups. Just come and listen and enjoy. Join an online spiritual community of everyday people committed to understanding the human experience more deeply through spiritual practices that we can apply to our everyday lives. Join us. Welcome to the 200th episode of the Infinite Spark of Being podcast. I can't believe I'm at 200 episodes. That is crazy. My name is Keith Welsh, and today we're going to explore something that, if you really let it in, has the potential to change how you see yourself, how you speak to yourself, and how you move through this world. We're talking about the power of I Am, and specifically the teachings of the I Am movement and the ever so mysterious figure of Saint Germain, a man who some say lived for centuries without aging, who appeared and disappeared like a ghost in the corridors of European power, and who may have left behind one of the most radical spiritual teachings of our time, that you, right now, are the divine in action. So let's get to it. The power of I Am, the hidden teachings of Saint Germain, and reclaiming your divinity. So everything around what some would call the I Am cult and Saint Germain is really wild. Saint Germain is whatever, one of those mysterious people in the spiritual and occult world that if it's not true, then what in the actual fuck? He's like Helena Blavatsky in that you don't really know what's going on. You don't know what's true. You don't know what's false. It's one of those big if true things, right? It's like these figures are purposefully shrouded in mystery so that only the initiated can really see the magic. In fact, this reminds me of a story. So I run, and sometimes my patella tendon gets sore. And when it does, I put KT tape on it. It works. I like it. Whatever. Well, once a therapist that I worked with said, "You know, that's just placebo, right? And it's not really doing anything." And my response was, "Oh, so my mind heals my knee when I put this magic tape on it?" Now, I know that KT tape works because I'm very active. I run, I'm fit, I use it, things feel better. This person, not so much. She's speaking out of school. She's repeating something that she's heard, not something that she has any experience with. She doesn't know. She's never used it. She doesn't run. And if she does, let's just say it's not the same thing I'm doing. Well, this is like when some normie says, "If there were UFOs, aren't there clear pictures? I mean, we've got photos." Well, there are. But every time someone shows you one of these clear pictures, you just say, "That's not real." All of this stuff requires a level of effort. It requires work to read, research ideas that not just support what you feel might be true, but to also research things that are attempting to disprove what you feel is true. It's easy to dismiss things. It's actually quite lazy. Now, look, I know that not everyone has that thing that someone like me has where I have to know everything that's going on and then spend time, actually days, pacing behind their significant other, flapping their gums about the violet flame and how Operation Bluebeam was just tested out in New Jersey with the drone phenomena, while their significant other just attempts to make a beautiful dinner, or pause a romantic song right at the crescendo on date night to rattle off a story about how Jacques Vallée is more interested in angels than aliens, and how that's very telling, and that it might just be that we're dealing with a spiritual phenomenon rather than an intergalactic one. Not everyone is like that. Thank God. And by the way, if you're listening to this, just know that these episodes might be completely unhinged if Christy wasn't there taking the brunt of it. Being chased around the house by me at a near shouting volume, talking about everything from the deep state to Iran to orbs to why money isn't real and why it's actually an invisible scorekeeping system. It's not easy, or so I'm told. I, for one, don't see a problem. I mean, shouldn't she also know all of these things? Why should I be the only one in the house carrying the burden of truth? Point being that the most compelling topics usually require the most attention. Think about it. How many times did you assume something at first blush, but then you looked deeper into it and completely changed your mind? Hopefully it happens a lot, right? It should happen all the time. But the big things, or one could say the true things, they require more than just a 60-second video clip to fully understand. It's not going to fit conveniently onto a square JPEG that then gets scrolled through social media. They require a lot of time. So anyway, let's start here. What is I am? 2 words. You use them every day without thinking about them. I am tired. I am broke. I am happy. I am anxious. But those 2 words are, in many ways, the creative engine of your entire experience of reality. When you say I am, you're not just describing yourself, you're declaring reality. Remember, affirmation, to affirm. You are identifying yourself with something, and because of that, you're reinforcing it, energizing it, and shaping your world through it. This isn't just New Age talk. This concept appears in nearly every single mystical tradition. In the book of Exodus, when Moses asks God, "Who shall I say sent me?" the voice replies, "I am that I am." It's a statement of pure existence. So the I am teachings say that every time you declare I am, you're either enslaving yourself to limitation or opening the door to freedom. Most of us are doing the former without even realizing it. Now, let's get into the man, the myth, the master, Count Saint Germain. This guy has popped in and out of my orbit forever. I once went to a violet flame meditation that I think was associated with the I am movement / I am cult. I'm not entirely sure, but it was centered around Saint Germain as one of the ascended masters. You know, I follow some feeds that are associated with him, and I really should share those in my stories at some point. But either way, I'm always interested in these more obscure New Age belief systems, and not out of this like a gawking curiosity, but legitimately out of the desire to know what they think. I really do find a lot of truth in these things. And like I was saying before, the myth around this character, Count Saint Germain, is fascinating because of the historical accounts. They just don't add up, and not in a way that makes me want to dismiss them, but more in a way that makes it all so mystical, and again, big if true, right? So Saint Germain first appears in the historical, I almost said biblical record, in the historical record in the early 18th century. He was described as a diplomat. He was a musician, an artist, a linguist, a chemist, and an alchemist. But what makes him truly fascinating is how he seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once, and he never appeared to age. A lot of these accounts have him in the courts of Louis XV of France, Frederick the Great of Prussia, and Catherine the Great of Russia. Voltaire knew who he was, and Voltaire wasn't exactly, into spiritual fluff, but he called him the man who never dies and knows everything. The Italian adventurer Casanova met him and wrote about how Saint Germain seemed to possess this vast knowledge of science, history, languages, and claimed to have lived for centuries. When Germain was with Louis XV, he entertained Louis XV with his violin playing. He would paint him pictures and had all this knowledge of philosophy, and yet he seemed ageless. And the ageless thing, it fascinates me, because if this guy showed up in the places he did, then he should have looked old as hell, but he just didn't. And what's with this legend? Why would people say they saw him if they didn't? It's a very elementary question, I know, but what would be their motivation? What do any of these people have to gain by doing that? Also, even that phrasing, what do these people have to gain? It shows my Western 21st century brain at work. They had nothing to gain. Like, they had nothing to gain. That's, at least I don't think they did. So let's look at it. So from 1710 to 1784, historical records trace him moving through Europe, but with no birth certificate or clear family origin. Understand that that was weird at the time, right? To be in these high-level places with no clear family origin was kind of crazy. And he supposedly died in 1784. Officially, Saint Germain said to have died in the home of Prince Charles Hesse-Kessel of Eckernfjord, Germany. Reports at the Times that he passed away peacefully, and apparently there's a funeral, at least on paper. But things get strange later on, because after his reported death, there's numerous credible witnesses that continue to claim seeing him across Europe. And again, why? Why would there be these reports? And I'm sure I sound naive asking this question, but just think about it in the context of the time. People didn't have time to be full of shit back then like they do now. Of course they were, but not to the level we do it, right? They were staying busy, like just trying to live, right? Life was just harder. And, I think about this a lot when, when someone has an anomalous experience, right? Whatever stripe of paranormal, whatever, even seeing somebody who's supposedly dead, a lot of people think that they're lying because the experiencer just wants to make money from their story or gather fame somehow. But if you look at all these cases, which I've looked at all of them over the years, right? Whether it's UFOs, poltergeists, whatever, it typically ruins their life. Like if you take something like the abduction case, the alien abduction case of Betty and Barney Hill. I realize I have to say that because some of you aren't such fucking dorks that you would know who Betty and Barney Hill are, but they were the first documented alien abduction case. It ruined their lives. They were an interracial couple in a very conservative time in American history, talking about being probed and sucked off by machines in a spaceship. Like, do you really think they were like, man, this is going to be fucking huge. People are going to love us. Like, Barney was a black guy married to a white woman. Like, he wasn't thinking, man, when these honkies hear about me getting my dick sucked by a machine on a spaceship, they're going to have a fucking parade and make me king of the world. Nope. They got ridiculed. But they shared their story anyway. The point being, very few people ever capitalize on their paranormal experiences or benefit from stepping out on the edge and saying that they experienced something anomalous, whether it's being milked by aliens or seeing somebody who's very famous and apparently dead. Now, you can obviously take this with a grain of salt, but again, you have to ask what anyone had to gain by saying that they were in contact with fucking Saint Germain, or that they'd seen him after he was dead. Some of the sightings apparently were during the French Revolution in the 1790s. Right? People claim to have seen him then, after his death. In Germany in 1850, Blavatsky, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, who we just talked about, the founder of Theosophy, claimed that she met him while she was traveling around doing crazy shit. And then finally, who we're going to talk about today, on Mount Shasta in 1930, apparently, Guy Ballard reported that Saint Germain physically appeared to him, marking the beginning of the modern I Am movement. Now, think about all of the spiritual and mystical figures that have ever lived. If you were going to make something up, would it be Count Saint Germain? I mean, nothing against the Count, but like, really? Him? Like, you got fucking anyone else. And again, not to, Saint Germain, if you're listening, I apologize, but you get my point. It's a weird one, right? And I think about it in terms like my experience with Saint Germain, like when I've seen it, how it showed up in my life over the years. It's like, I guess this guy just has a history of popping up at weird times. I don't know. Now, let's talk about how this all really got going, since that's why we're here. Let's talk about how Saint Germain went from just being, I don't want to say obscure, but just his philosophies and his beliefs are just kind of these whispers in European courts, and only the upper class kind of knew about it, to being a full-blown spiritual movement in the 20th century. So in the early 1930s, a man named Guy Warren Ballard, a mining engineer from Kansas, was hiking on the slopes of Mount Shasta in California. Again, he was an engineer. He wasn't anything. He was an engineer. So he was like an engineer, like left brain, whatever. He was just an ordinary guy. Yeah, I guess he was, curious about metaphysical ideas, esoteric teachings. Again, why Count Saint Germain? Anyway, according to Ballard, his account was that while he was resting on the mountain, he encountered a man who identified himself as Saint Germain. And then he described this as a physical encounter. It wasn't a vision. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't whatever, but that Saint Germain appeared in the flesh. He was radiant and commanding and began to reveal to Ballard the teachings of the mighty I Am presence. So Saint Germain didn't just give him a sermon and disappear, right? He didn't just vanish. It makes you wonder, like, did he just meet like a homeless guy on a mountain? Anyway, but he allegedly took Ballard through a series of profound mystical experiences over a long period of time. And he offered direct instruction on how to work with the power of the I Am. And according to Ballard, these experiences included visions of past civilizations, cosmic laws of energy, and the power of the spoken word as a tool for creation. So Ballard began recording these experiences and teachings, which became the foundation for what would later be known as the I Am movement. So together with his wife, Edna Ballard, Guy founded the Saint Germain Foundation and the Saint Germain Press, through which they published the I Am Discourses, which was a collection of channeled messages said to be from Saint Germain himself, along with other ascended masters. So this whole thing gets pretty big pretty quick. They had tens of thousands of followers across America. And to add another layer of, not confusion, but kind of like brow furrowing, head tilting, this all happened during the Great Depression. Think about that. Americans were starving. Banks collapsed. Things were falling the fuck apart. Again, we take for granted the idea of these channeled New Age folks because it's in our zeitgeist, but at the time, this was very, very revolutionary. Society in America was coming apart at the seams. For a lot of people, the American dream was dead. Now, my parents were born in 1936, so I only have their stories as well as a poverty mindset that was downloaded into my brain, but that's my work. So this guy is teaching these teachings in the midst of the Great Depression. Like, people were hungry, literally hungry. They were hungry for empowerment, and the I Am teachings provided exactly that. It provided the promise that no matter how bleak your circumstances, you could claim your divine authority, and that through the power of your own spoken word and conscious thought, you could transform your life. At the time, that was huge. Think about that for a second. So Guy and Edna hold these massive gatherings in hotel ballrooms and convention centers, and they would draw thousands of people, all chanting affirmations and studying the teachings of these ascended masters, right? The I Am movement became the first mass spiritual movement in America to center around the concept of ascended masters. This wasn't in the zeitgeist at the time. Again, try to appreciate where this is coming from. I like doing these episodes that show the origins of so much of our spirituality in the 21st century. I think with all of these things, to look at them in the context of the time is pretty extraordinary. So let's look at it. It all started with one man on a mountain, meeting a mysterious figure who told him essentially, you are what you seek. The power is within you. So whether you see this story as literal truth, whether you see it as an allegory or something kind of in between, it serves as a powerful reminder. Our spiritual awakening can happen at any moment, even on an ordinary day, to an engineer from Kansas in an ordinary place like Mount Shasta, which I don't think is that ordinary, but at these ordinary times, we can be reminded of our extraordinary divine nature. Trauma responses, anxiety, ruminating thinking, grief and loss, stress, these are all reoccurring patterns in the mind. They're often the result of reacting the same way over and over again. Why do we do this? Because the mind believes the past is still here, happening now, causing the nervous system to respond accordingly. What the mind perceives, the body feels. Mind Transformation and Restructuring, MTR, offers a pathway to release these patterns. It guides both the mind and the nervous system out of these repetitive cycles and into a lighter, freer way of being. If this resonates with you, feel free to reach out via direct message or through the contact section at theinfinitesparkofbeing.com. You don't have to live the way you've been living. Change is possible. And here's something else wild to think about. And I know some people might clutch their pearls at this, but if you're just going to go by written historical records, right, by actual historians and firsthand witnesses, there are arguably more accounts of Saint Germain than there are of Jesus Christ himself. Voltaire, Casanova, court records, letters from actual European nobility, they all mention meeting this man. Not as a myth, not as hearsay, but as a fact. They wrote about sitting with him at royal dinners, hearing him play music, debating philosophy with him. Meanwhile, the earliest records we have of Jesus were written decades after his death. And they were written by people who never met him. They never met him in the flesh anyway. Now, that doesn't make Saint Germain more divine or Jesus less divine. That's not what I'm saying, but it does make you wonder about the nature of history and how some figures kind of slip through the cracks while others get canonized forever. It raises some real questions about how history is written and who decides what stays and what disappears, right? Now, some accounts even connect him to the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, the Great White Brotherhood, all secret societies believed to be preserving esoteric knowledge, and I hope to do episodes on all of those in the future. But now, is there a hard proof? No. But there are enough records, letters, credible accounts from the time that make this one a very fascinating kind of spiritual, historical mystery. And the question isn't really like whether he was immortal. It's what he taught, right? Sometimes we get caught up in the whatever about something and whether the teachings can actually change your life, right? I mean, that's why we're here. So the teachings attributed to Saint Germain, later expanded by Guy and Edna Ballard in the 1930s, all center around one core idea. You are not separate from the divine. You are the divine individualized, and you are the I am presence. The Ballards taught that the mighty I am presence is your true self, an unlimited, radiant, creative force that exists beyond your personality, right? Beyond your body, beyond your circumstances. You're not here to worship God as something outside of yourself. They believed you were here to embody that divinity. So let's zoom in on the philosophy behind this. This isn't a new idea for those of you that are familiar with this podcast. However, for those of you that might be new, there is a crucial aspect to all of this that you need to understand. And that is that your experience of life, of reality, is the mind. Meaning that you only experience the mind. And not to use the word only in a dismissive way, but as to say that your experience of reality is a direct reflection of your mind. And to take it a bit further and to be a bit more accurate, your mind is how you relate to the experiences and happenings of reality, of the world. And language is a cognitive faculty of the mind, meaning language is a series of sounds and symbols that inform the mind and the nervous system as to how it should think and feel about what's happening. So the way we speak about things, how we describe things is very important if we want to change the way we experience things. So according to Saint Germain and the I Am movement and just about every other spiritual or religious or mind metaphysical system out there, every thought, every word, every belief you attach to I am is a command to the universe. As I've mentioned in the past, us Westerners are programmed to think in certain ways, and one of those ways is that we should ask in prayer, right? That prayers are a form of asking, of astral begging. So to say that we are going to command the universe seems a bit wrong in a way. At least it did for me. And then, we cover our bases when we pray by saying things like, only if you want to help me, Lord, only if it's in your plan, I see those little, closings, I see them as a form of doubt, right? Well, Mark chapter 11, verse 12 says, believe that ye received them, and ye shall have them. And verse 24 of the same book and chapter says, therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Those are red letters, in case you're wondering. Those are the words of Jesus Christ. Jesus, the guy that the entire New Testament is about, is telling you to do it this way. I'm saying this because many of you are Christians or struggling with Christianity, or you might be disaffected Christians. I don't know. So I like to point these things out, right? Especially if you have religious trauma like I did, meaning things happen to you in the church that essentially cut your mind off from God. So these I am statements are like writing the code that runs your operating system for your life. They're very important. So when you say something like, I am not good enough, you're programming limitation. Moreover, you're praying for that. When you say, I am abundant, you're programming expansion. You are praying for that, right? Whatsoever you desire. This teaching isn't asking you to deny reality, right? It's asking you to recognize that your experience of reality is being shaped by how you identify yourself. So if the mind is the lens that we're going to experience reality through, which lens would you rather use? Which lens do you think would bring about the best experience for you and those around you? Right? Would you like to see the world through the lens of limitation and lack, or through abundance and expansion? The spiritual practice of I am is about radical self-responsibility. It's not about blaming or victimhood, and it's definitely not about outsourcing your power to a priest or a guru or a government or whatever, right? You start living as if you are the creative divine force behind your own experience, because you are. So how do you apply this? Well, 1, language awareness, right? Start noticing how you talk about yourself, right? When you hear yourself say, I am tired, or I am broke, or I am stuck, just stop. Pause, flip it. As ridiculous as it might feel or sound at the time, just flip it. right? Flip it in your head, say it differently in private, right? Or if it's public, do what I do. Sometimes when I notice that I've said something out loud that's kind of bad about myself, I say, I shouldn't have said that. And then I reword it, right? You don't have to lie to yourself, right? Though you kind of already are lying to yourself with all of your negative bullshit, but just kind of shift the energy, right? So I am open to energy, or I am flowing with abundance. I am free to grow. Now, if I said I am learning to flow with abundance, is that the same as I am flowing with abundance? Does it feel? Of course not, right? Now, you might still feel as though you are learning, but the real you, the soul, is not learning. It already knows. It's about catching the conscious mind up with the program. The conscious mind would say that it's a lie because you are still learning. Well, which statement do you think gets you there faster? Like, to continually put it just as something to achieve, or to say it's already here, right? I mean, the soul knows, and you are the soul. So start identifying with it. Now, number 2, every morning speak 5, 6, 9, whatever, present tense, positive I am affirmations, and say them out loud, right? Maybe you say, I am abundant. I am free. I am light. Whatever it is, just do it. If it feels corny and it's awkward, then I don't know. Go back to being a negative shit about everything. I'm sure eventually it'll all be fine. I'm just kidding. Just do the fucking practice. Everyone is sick of you being a negative pain in the ass anyway, so you might as well just fucking change it. Now, number 3, meditative practice. Sit quietly and mentally repeat, I am. Just that. No labels, just pure awareness. Think the word I on the inhale, and then think am on the exhale, right? I on the inhale, am on the exhale, or so hum, which means that I am. So you would think so on the inhale and hum on the exhale. And finally, thought correction, right? Throughout your day, catch negative I am statements and rewrite them in real time. Right? This is not just positive thinking. It's actually like training your mind to align with your higher nature. So don't judge it. Just do it. I know some of it sounds corny or whatever, but just, I don't know. What do you get to lose? Just fucking try it. Now let's get to the controversy. Pardon me if I sound a little cynical, a little sideways, a little shitty in this. I'm talking about this. So there's these cult accusations, right? So this whole movement explodes in popularity, explodes in the 1930s and in the 40s, okay? Imagine Americans in the 30s and the 40s. But the I Am movement held these massive gatherings, right? They published dozens of books. They attracted hundreds of thousands of followers. And they draw this criticism and eventually legal attention, which no cult leader likes legal attention. I'm sorry, Guy Ballard wasn't a cult leader. I'm being completely ridiculous. But people called it a cult. I'm pretty sure that people of the status quo religious perspective call everything a cult. Even the Hare Krishnas were a cult, which I find hilarious when Christians refer to Vaishnavism as a cult. I won't get into it. Anyway, so they're exploited. The Ballards were, accused of exploiting their followers. They were accused of financial exploitation, emotional exploitation, and they had the balls. The Ballards had the balls to encourage blind devotion. Can you imagine? Encouraging blind devotion, and they were also accused, and this is the big one, but they were accused of making unverifiable metaphysical claims. Can you imagine that? Making an unverifiable metaphysical claim. It's like, Would you get up from the dead and walk around? Anyway, in 1942, they were indicted for mail fraud. They were accused of deceiving people through their teachings, which I find fucking insane. So essentially the fraud was drummed up accusations because they were mailing their teachings, and some folks didn't like the teachings and they didn't think they were true. So that's fraud. I mean, that sounds really subjective. Mail me a fucking Bible. I might, try to get you indicted on mail fraud. Anyway, that case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it resulted in a landmark decision protecting religious freedom. You fucking assholes. I can't. I want to go off on a tirade, and I'm really, really trying not to, but I'm just imagining some fucking asshole in a pork pie hat in the 1930s, probably a fucking reverend, and just talking about, these are unverifiable metaphysical claims. I don't know, kind of like turning bread into fish or dildos into cucumbers. I don't know what the fuck. This stuff pisses me off. Anyway, the government was like, hey, we can't decide whether these religious claims are true or false. So no shit, fuckface. No shit. So the Ballards won the case. But, by then the damage is done. The movement's reputation was done, and they couldn't fix it. Let's face it, we know what this was about. We all know the beliefs of the people in the 1930s and the fucking 40s, and we know what they were accusing them of. Right? And the irony is fucking knee-buckling. I mean, accusing them of requiring blind devotion and unverifiable metaphysical claims. The nerve. I don't know if you can hear my eyes rolling so far into the back of my skull that I can see my fucking brain or not, but yeah. So, was it a cult? I mean, that's honestly, it's a complicated question. Were there authoritarian structures? Yes, there were. There were authoritarian structures, just like every fucking thing else. Were some people exploited? Possibly. Honestly, I'm not just trying to be like favorable to the I Am movement, but possibly. I don't know. I mean, it's not like that's never happened, but this is the take. I don't want you to get lost in that, but this is what I want you to remember. The abuse and flaws, right, of an organization, any organization, whether it's the Catholic Church, whether it's the Hare Krishnas, whatever, it doesn't invalidate the truth of a spiritual teaching. The I Am teaching is not about handing over your power. It's about reclaiming it, right? Look at it as, we'll say, a Christian in the 1930s, and you get this person going, I am. Can you imagine how offensive that is? Anyway, but I want you to go back to those Bible verses that I mentioned. Was it last episode? This episode as well? No, the episode on decentralizing spirituality. Go listen to that again. Anyway, this whole I Am movement was about reclaiming this personal power at a time when people didn't feel like they had any. It was about self-mastery, sovereignty, responsibility. These are the core tenets. The rest is just like human fucking messiness, right? We just talked about this. Teachers can be messy. They're humans. They're not fully cooked, enlightened beings. They're just a messenger. And I don't think that you should let the fallibility of a human fuck up an entire movement. It's like when the Dalai Lama tried to suck that kid's tongue. And it's like, oh, that's a tradition in my land. Like, okay, if it is, stop. But, I did an episode on that too. But I just, it doesn't mean that Buddhism is fucking garbage. People mess up and, it's like, you see it in politics too. You pick the extreme of the right and the left and think that everyone on those ends of the spectrum are just like that. Like all liberals are blue-haired people that think they're cats and they shit in boxes in their bathrooms. Like, I don't know if that's true. And every conservative isn't a right-wing extremist Christian nationalist, right? Most people are somewhere in the middle. And the same thing with the I Am movement, any of these things, right? Like I talked about it, I believe briefly. I talked about the stuff that happened in the Kripalu ashram. So anyway, this is really why I wanted to do the episode, because if you strip away the movement, the drama, the accusations, you're left with something ancient. And not only is it ancient, but it's universal. It's something that you always see. And again, the thing I want to go back to, I'm sorry, but if you were going to lie about having an experience with an ascended master, you're going to pick Saint Germain. Well, maybe that's because it's the least believable. No, there might be something there. I do believe that we are contacted by beings. I believe that I've had experiences, people close to me have had these experiences. If you live a certain kind of life, it's going to happen. And those of you that haven't had those experiences and you dismiss it and you poo-poo it, it's probably because, I don't know, man. Are you putting in the time the rest of us are? I don't know. I think that, like I was saying, a lot of these things require effort and diligence. Again, it's like the UFO things. Like, I've seen a lot of things in the sky. I've seen a lot of it. Some of it I've videotaped, right? And it's like, if you show it to somebody, they go, oh, it's a fucking this, it's a that. It's like, no, it's not. You weren't there. Or someone that have you, and they're like, well, I go outside all the time and I don't see anything. You don't sit outside like I do. I guarantee you don't. So anyway, universal teachings. It's the same thing that everybody teaches, right? You are not who you think you are. You are not your name, your trauma, your status, your past. You are consciousness itself. You are the I am. Can you imagine in the 1930s hearing that? I get it. It would freak people out. People thought that Paramahansa Yogananda was running a sex cult when he first came to teach in the United States. It's not crazy. Anyway, so this is not exclusive to Saint Germain or the Ballards, right? Like this teaching, the I am. It's everywhere. And, I've mentioned this before in Advaita Vedanta, right? The teaching of that Atman, soul, and Brahman, universal consciousness source, that they're one thing. In Buddhism, the recognition that the self is an illusion, that Keith being this and being that's an illusion. That it's not objectively true or real, right? The Christian, in Christian mysticism, Meister Eckhart's teachings that the soul and God are the same at their source. That's Hinduism, right? That's all of it. It's very interesting. This isn't about religion. It's about awakening to who you've always been at your core, your essential spiritual nature. Look, we live in a world that constantly tells you what you are. You are a worker. You are a consumer. You are broken. You are not enough. You are the diagnosis. The I am teaching is the antidote to that hypnosis. It says you are infinite. You are creative. You are free. You are divine. You are the I am presence in human form. Sure, you can choose to speak limitation or liberation. You can choose to identify with your wounds or your wholeness. The practice isn't complicated. It's not flashy. It's daily, it's subtle, it's the moment-to-moment choice to live with your sovereignty instead of your story. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. The mystery, the philosophy, the practice, and yes, the controversy of the I Am teachings in Saint Germain. Of course, having a Sangha or group of truth tellers is great, but if you don't need to join a movement, right? Having a guide or a spiritual friend is very helpful, but you don't need to follow a guru. You don't need to believe in immortal alchemists or ascended masters. You just need to pay attention to how you're speaking to yourself. Because every time you say, I am, you are creating your world. So I'll leave you with this. You are light. You are free. You are love. You are the divine. You are the I am. You reminded me, and now I'm reminding you. I love you. I love you. I love you. You are not alone. You never have been. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you enjoyed this content and would like to support its creation, visit theinfinitesparkofbeing.com. There you can explore the various ways to get involved and support this work. Click the About button, read a little bit about me, and see what I have to offer you through the one-on-one sessions. Don't forget to check out the Patreon tiers, where we're building a community of everyday people with not-so-everyday interests. You'll also find the online apparel store. And as always, head over to the Participate button and join us. Together, we're growing a community of spiritual seekers just like you.